time for my talk with Micah, and I'm going to bring him in now to the talk. Hello, Micah. Hi,
Right.
can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah, both. Can you hear me?
I
See
can
me?
hear you. I can see you. How are you today?
Oh, I'm good. I went into work for a few hours and I was scheduled to leave, and it actually kind of got crazy. So everything seemed to align. There was a full moon, so I'm sure there will be a lot of shenanigans, but I'm glad to be here. So thank you for having me.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for coming back onto the podcast, Micah. I
Oh,
truly
yeah.
appreciate it. And for donating copies of your books as well to people that are taking part in the fundraiser today. I really appreciate that as well.
Of
We
course.
have spoken. I've read your memoir. I have my own copy here that you sent me. For anybody that has not listened to the episode or come across your work in other places, can you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes. Hi. So I am Micah Losh. I am the author of, well, three books, but only one is out. It is Mentally Diseased, which is a flattering term that Jehovah's Witnesses call former members that have left. And I had another far more pretentious title, like a working title. And then I don't know. I decided, you know what, I'm going to take that because I know the hatred that's behind it, and I'm just going to put it on a book with my face and maybe, kind of to disempower it and maybe kind of stick it to, the leaders of the cult who stole everything from me.
Would you share that working title with us?
Yeah. So I was going to call it JWNAA, How One Cult Saved Me from Another. But then when I started looking into slander, sorry, I keep saying slander is spoken, I think libel is written. And so I didn't really want, I never used the word cult calling any group that in my memoir, actually, because I wanted to be, I don't want a lawsuit.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's interesting because AA could be a number of many things. Over here, we have AA car recovery. So, if you break down somewhere, you call the AA and they come and pick you up. So, if you were to have one AA come to you and say, "Oh, we're going to sue you," you could say, "I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the AA car recovery in the UK."
yeah. And yeah, so well anyway, I'm really glad to be here. Sorry, I'm excited, but yeah, it's A does stand for a lot of things. Like we have AAA here, um but yeah. Sorry.
So we're going to be discussing a number of things today. One of the things is the importance of art in recovery. We touched upon this a little bit in our conversation before that is already out on the Cult Vault podcast. And also when I visit your Amazon bio, it also mentions the importance of art in healing, in your opinion. So
Mhm.
I wondered if we could start with an overview of your experiences in the Jehovah's Witnesses that led to you finding art as a way to need to heal from those experiences.
So, my father, he died when I was 13. And when I was 18, that's when I wrote, I believe it's when I wrote my first poem. And I was active on some, I think it was MSN Messenger. I would find bands I liked. And because I was really excluded from Jehovah's Witnesses. It'd been about 5 years. Ever since my dad died, there was just a demarcation, and I was kind of excluded, soft shunned. So I started showing my work to people, and I received a lot of praise and compliments, and it was really nice because it, that was the first time I remember being praised for something that I had made. Everything else was just, you're a good Jehovah's Witness. You did a good job on your part. You gave a good answer. But there was really nothing about the individual because you're really stripped of your identity in these groups. So I found that very addicting. And so I kept writing, and I even started it's readily apparent when I've gone back over 20 years of writing how I was struggling with cognitive dissonance. And it really was a safe place to kind of deal with things, or even I always loved horror stories. So I would write little short stories that were macabre. But Jehovah's Witnesses always, oh, why do you have to? Why are you always in all black? Why do you always talk about dark things? And I really kind of, anytime I showed it to Jehovah's Witnesses, it was like they got uncomfortable, like they were reading some kind of manifesto. And even my own mother, when I would try and share my stuff with her, she would say, well, I don't get it. I guess I'm not very intelligent. And I don't know, that always hurt. It was a weird, odd rejection that, I felt like if you don't understand, I'm your child, why would you not ask me what it means? Or what I like to do is be kind of vague in my paintings, drawings, and writing, because I feel like it allows people to fill in the blanks and really personalize it. And I like how art can be, interpreted different ways. I've always been fascinated by that. But so I started writing, and I never did anything with it. I kept it hidden. And so then when I decided to write a memoir about Jehovah's Witnesses and, my acrimonious exit, I really, I don't know how that idea came to me, but I thought I want to include my poetry in that, because I always wanted to have a band, but I can't sing. And I always liked lyrics. I always connected. And for me growing up, I always felt a very profound isolation. And the only time really that I felt connection was music. I would hear these bands, and I have this really deep love for my favorite singers. I've never met them. I don't expect they're perfect or they would even like me, but there are certain people that saved my life. There are certain albums that the only thing that kept me from killing myself that day was listening to that album. And I don't know if I can do that, but if I can affect people, and I want to chase that. I want that high that brings, because that's just, I don't know if it's validation. I don't know. It's just very fulfilling, and I wanted more of it.
You mentioned the word connection, and that's something that has come up quite a lot throughout this stream so far, in terms of searching for community, searching for belonging, searching for acceptance. And I feel like connection is another one of those words that falls into that remit of looking for something that is bigger than just us. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, as we've heard from multiple testimonies around the Jehovah's Witnesses, that particular community is not really offering that community in a prosperous and positive manner, in terms of the experiences that individuals have spoken about on this show. That's not to say that everybody's having these experiences, but it seems a lot of people are. And something else that is really poignant with your experience, from reading your book, and also in terms of somebody else who's spoken on the stream today, is Andrew Pledger speaking about how the IFB are really isolated. Independent fundamentalist, but the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church is really segregated from society. But inside the IFB, Andrew's family were so conservative and took things so far that even inside the IFB, Andrew felt isolated and different, and he never really felt like there was a place for him. And I keep coming back to your writing, I keep coming back to your memoir, and I keep coming back to the Jehovah's Witnesses being isolated, segregated from worldly people, but inside the group you still felt like you never really found a place to belong.
Oh, I don't remember enough to correctly to even know. I don't really remember much before my dad dying. I remember I had some, but kids will be friends with anybody. So, who even knows? But so what? Billions of people. There are approximately 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses, and I always said I was a pariah among the I can't think of the other word I used, but I was a pariah among the outcasts, because for me, and a lot of it is they tell you that every congregation is ran the same, but if you go to different ones, you notice these inconsistencies, which if God was orchestrating it, wouldn't happen. But I remember one time I was told I was essentially a bad Christian because I had a Black Sabbath t-shirt on. And somebody said, "Oh, their music is so dark." And I said, "Well, what about War Pigs? I mean, that's essentially a war protest song. It's not advocating." And then they were going on and on. And so then in front of a lot of people, I said, "Well, you listen to a band where the lead singer is a witch and witchcraft is forbidden in the Bible. You're a hypocrite." And I never really understood that, because while I was in, I thought like, okay, yeah, these people aren't true Christians, but I can listen to their rock music. If I can do that, why can't, like I'm not listening about witchcraft. But if they don't like you, certain people can get away with stuff. There was one elder, his daughter would come in the shortest, tiny skirts and barely a t-shirt, but she was an elder's daughter, so she got away with murder. Total hypocrisy and inconsistency. But yeah, if they don't like you, they in every congregation there were certain people that were just mistreated and dumped on, and a lot of times they were very odder than even me. But yeah, they really would mistreat them. And when these people, I did it as well, I'd say like, "Hey, I'm lonely, I don't have anybody to do anything with, I'm not doing well." Well, the fault was always on me. I should ask again, I should pray. It's a cycle, and I had to get away from it to really realize what it was, and I feel like I'm still kind of
Yeah.
understanding that.
And that another thing that we've talked about this stream is that recovery is just ongoing. People realize different things at different stages. But you have Mentally Diseased published, and you have two
Mhm.
other works coming out soon.
Yes.
Before the end of the year, there will be a trilogy or a trinity,
Yeah.
which I think is an interesting term to use. How did you start to put Mentally Diseased together, and how did you feel when you realized that it was going to become a memoir that you would publish?
Well, you know, I actually I was sitting in this room, and I think when I started writing it, I wrote it with the expectation of receiving a catharsis. And to my surprise, that's not what happened at all. I wanted to talk about my life because my son, I still see him, but I don't see him nearly as much as I would like. And I wrote it for him because I just don't know my parents. I don't remember much. And so it kind of was a way for me to feel close to him. And then I did probably 10 to 15 edits myself. And then I hired an editor, and I hired Sarah Riches, who is an ex Jehovah's Witness, to paint the cover. And I love everyone loves the
Yeah,
cover. I
it's
feel like it's a
awesome.
very, it really is like, what is this about? And, but, I was left to die in the streets. I lost my home. I lost my car, my family, my identity, everything. And even beyond that, when my father was dying, he martyred himself for this cult. My mother shuns me for them. I have a half brother that, well, he tracked me down when I was 25. I don't know if my dad knew and just didn't raise him. I didn't think that at the time, but I'll never know now. And I've essentially been robbed of almost everything. And I'm not trying to throw a pity party, but for me, I mean, part of it was spite. When I really saw it and I thought about the governing body, I thought, how goddamn dare you? I know that you're doing what you did to me to other people, and I know children are still being born into it. And I just had to. I wanted to do something, and also I wanted to kind of apologize for things in the past. So, really was a multifaceted thing that really I threw myself into it and it seemed impossible. And sometimes I published it on my birthday, which was a very important thing for me because I'd never celebrated my birthday. And so I published it, and that night at my job, some people sang happy birthday to me and gave me a cupcake, and I cried like a little girl. But it was an emotion that was too big for me to process, which was really overwhelming. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. And since it's come out, a lot of repressed memories have come back. Many of them I could do without. They're not particularly horrible. They're just reminders of painful times. But and it is true about recovery being ongoing, because I noticed a few months ago I saw a movie with some friends, and my laugh is different than it was for decades, which I just think how profoundly creepy that is. Like, how deep were your tendrils in me that I laughed different?
Nicole has said in the chat, that is such a good point. The rules are often inconsistent and used as convenient leverage on those most vulnerable. Um, so Nicole has a really great way of nuancing everything into very lovely sentences in a way that I could never do. But one of the main focuses of our first conversation was around the hypocrisy that is shown by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Are there any examples of hypocrisy that you can pull out of thin air in terms of your experiences, Micah?
I mean, there are so many. And what's weird is when you're in it, you're told that your heart is treacherous, so it cannot be trusted. You can't trust anything you want with your heart, but you're also told to avoid independent thinking. So all you have is what they give you. And once you look out of it, what is it? They say you can't celebrate birthdays because in the Bible, birthdays are mentioned twice. And both times they're mentioned, it's negative. I think there's a murder at each one. And they say, based on that, all scripture is inspired and beneficial for teaching, reproving, and setting things straight. So birthdays are bad, but every single scripture that mentions a dog is negative. But Jehovah's Witnesses have dogs. It's cherry picking. Whatever bullshit they want to shove down the throat of their flock, they will find a way to do it. And then even if they lie or make a mistake, they just say, whoops, that was old light. We got new light. But why would a God of love intentionally mislead his one true religion? Because it stumbles people. Humans cannot stumble people at all. If you stumble your brother, tie a millstone to your neck, get thrown into the sea, that's better. But Jehovah is allowed to stumble his flock through his ineffectual leadership. Why can a perfect God who has the gift of foresight not tell these idiots how to run a religion? Almost none of it holds up to scrutiny, which, once you figure out the mousetrap, it's like, oh, you just see it all. And it's like the whole house of cards collapses.
I love that expression of mousetrap and house of cards. There's so many different metaphors that people use to explain that moment of really realizing that none of it is like a puzzle. You take away one piece and you realize that all of the other pieces, they all come together to create this system. So
Yeah.
even if you realize that you don't necessarily believe in the scripture or the beliefs, or if you have doubts or questions about the belief system or the practices, there's the next puzzle piece of having everything that you've ever known in that group. And if you are to question those beliefs, then you are going to be subjected to losing that community, the fear of doomsday with the dates coming and going and coming and going. It is all the different facets that come together to create that entire picture. And it's house of cards. I think Janja Lalich uses the tapestry. You pull one string and it all
Mhm.
starts to fall apart. And I love that metaphor as well. So you realize that all the different techniques are being used to basically hold you captive.
Mhm. Well, and not only do they foster codependency on the group, and it's very insular, but you never use your brain. You are just a blind, obedient drone. And yeah, the one crack just reflects exponentially the cracks and everything else, and it all comes down, and it's like, well, what do I do? Like this night and this night I went there and I prepared and I thought I was one of the chosen ones and I had this divine purpose and God was actively, influencing my life. And then it's like coming out of the matrix. That's the best way to describe it, because absolutely nothing is real. And I mean, many people get out with, some stuff. I mean, me, I was fundamentally destroyed. I mean, every single way. Um,
The memoir that you've been able to put together, Mentally Diseased, the first book in the trilogy, I've read some reviews. I went a couple of days ago to read some reviews. Do you look at those things to see how the book's been received?
yes. My feeling with art is if it's loved or hated, at least it evoked emotion. I always feel like apathy is death regarding art. And usually I'll screenshot it and put the reviews because I really do appreciate them. And, even sometimes people will message me or it could be on Reddit or whatever. And they've sent me these really beautiful compliments, that really they mean a lot to me. It's really cool to know that your art has affected people, and that I just love that feeling.
The second book in the series, what is the title and what is going to be the focus of the second book?
So my second book is titled Gangrenous Speeches, which is a mouthful, but that is something that Jehovah's Witnesses tell their other Jehovah's Witnesses. They say you must avoid these apostates' gangrenous teachings, which I think is utterly absurd because I have no teachings. I'm an atheist. I don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to draw anyone to my cause or convert anybody. I retired from the life saving business, no more. And so basically, it's 100 poems, poetry, prose. Dang it, what's the word? I'm sorry. And it also has a letter I wrote after I overdosed and died and was in a coma, and I was in a stress center for like 2 weeks. That's in there about halfway through, and it's kind of like songs and just different things. You know, there's one thing I wrote. It's called 2/3, 1/2, and 30/30. A Jehovah's Witness I grew up with was fist fighting her husband, and she was on cocaine. He was too, and he like punched her, and she lost the baby. And also during that time, I had just turned 30. I had broken up, and I worked at a nursing home, and they always died in threes. So it's actually I made a picture. It's like a 24 hours worth of work into the drawing, and it's just that's just how I dealt with pain because I couldn't be sad about that happening. I was always just told, well, Jehovah will fix things, wait on Jehovah. That's what happens when you leave Jehovah. So it just didn't make sense, but I never really questioned it because I knew that was, heresy. So it's really just me poured out onto paper. It's 20
Mm.
years of, I have some poems to my first girlfriend. And then some of it's about me and some of it's just kind of fiction, like little vignettes. It's just I wanted to share that. In a lot of ways, it almost feels more personal than mentally diseased, but I like the connective
Mm.
tissue of I have the poems in here and then just the rest of them, and I don't know. We'll see.
I just love the way you just have such good vocabulary. You and Nicole would have a wonderful conversation with some great words thrown in. The third book in
Thank
the
you.
trilogy, please tell us all about what we can expect from that.
Okay, so after I kind of told my story about how I left, and then I decided to do the second book. I thought, what would be utterly absurd is three books, and I call it the apostasy trilogy, which I think is just pretentious and ridiculous, but it's a dig at Jehovah's Witnesses. Those are this because they call Jehovah's Witnesses despicable that leave. And if you're going to write that, then I'm going to write a story that's truly despicable. And so it's fiction. It's based on Elohim seekers, which is a religion I made up, and I set up the like the theology, and the leader um, learns the true nature of God and essentially writes a satanic prophecy. And set during COVID, a member of takes over one of the leaders and calls all the people who protect pedophiles to their headquarters and exterminates them. And it's it's a very dark story. I try and explain things that are brutal, but in an eloquent way. And I think the reason for it is I remember when I was a little boy, my mom said, during Armageddon, we will be tortured more than any other humans ever have been. And I'm like, the Holocaust. They used to feed Christians to lions. It'll be worse than that. Yeah. And the terror that filled me with. I used to lay in bed and like I remember once I read that I think lions start to eat you while you're still alive. And I would just think about them like ripping open my abdomen and eating my spleen, and I have to go to kindergarten in the
Oh
morning.
gosh.
So, and the Bible is filled with horrific stories, and weird ones like David and his bag of foreskins. So a lot of it is satirical and mocking just the way I was brought up, and I don't really relish in any of the violence. It just serves the story. But I've always loved horror movies, and of course, Jehovah's Witnesses always told me, that was because I was worldly, and I always kind of hated myself for watching, Nightmare on Elm Street, stuff like that. So I want to create my own character and tell my own story.
Mm,
And I've written 70 pages of it. And so far, I really enjoy the world building. And, I don't want to just make stuff happen. I want to find ways in this universe to really make it believable. And I found a third ex Jehovah's Witness artist to paint the cover, which I'm kind of going to make the Antichrist look like me because why not? So it I'm really excited about it. That's really been fun because the memoir was just 120 pages of trauma. And I'm like, God, I had to take breaks because
yeah,
sometimes it hurts too much. So it's nice to be able to just create, and yeah, there's freedom in that I'm really enjoying.
that's awesome. And I can see how excited and passionate you are about the project as well. It's going to be interesting to see the parallels that you have drawn, or the inspiration that you've drawn on from lived experiences in the Jehovah's Witnesses and things that actually happen within that organization in this fictional world.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the second and the third book. I really, really enjoy your writing, and I
Thank
wondered
you.
if you would possibly do a reading for us. I have chosen something, unless you have
Yeah.
something that you would prefer, or
No,
unless you wouldn't want to do a reading. Don't let me pressure you into it.
you're okay. Which one did you have in mind?
It's for chapter 7, physically out, mentally in, and it's page
Oh,
44. I wondered if you could just read the poem. I love how every chapter starts with a poem that you've written. Not just an inspirational quote or a notable quote from another author from another book. These are all poems that you've written at the start of every chapter, and I really love it. And the line that this poem ends on, I was just like, more amazing wordplay, and it's yeah, I think it speaks to the creativity and the artistry inside the book, even through the really dark subject matter.
Thank you. And actually, the line that you mentioned is one of my favorite things I've ever written. So I'm glad that you mentioned
Good.
it because I remember I wrote that and I was like, oh, I was like, that's pretty. I thought it was pretty
It's
good.
good. It's a
So
good one. It's a good one. It was the one where I was like, do it, earmark that page and ask Micah to read it.
yeah, sure, I can read that. All right, here we go. A siren cutting the air, born anew in unseen atmosphere. Hellfire curls around the billowing form of a seraph. Wait, and I'm just about sick. Asinine rationalization, stiff with conceit, claiming doubt, strength, and independence. The diametric opposite of your bullshit persona. I don't want you for an echo. No segue. These lies and flighty theories are mutually exclusive. No love like first love. I've forgotten that passion. Everyone does. If every pain, sorrow, mistake, and punishment was so I might save you, it was worthwhile. You just sit there like a cold sociopath bastard. Don't say what I want to hear, sycophant. The mystery you are, I was. This is a betrayal, an indulgence of self. You lie. My love is unconditional. My friendship isn't. Wait, I'm sick. This wears on me as you sit there arrogant. Pride goes before a fall. So throw it all away. I will not bear witness. You don't get to apologize for ruining my day. Not to me, to your family, or yourself. Be a man. Own what you do, my dear brother, my child. I am sick. I'm just about sick of you. Smudging black and white. No juxtapositions, only complication. Generalities, and you lied. You are Cain, and I am Abel.
Oh, it's powerful stuff. Thank you so much for that, Micah. Thank you for reading that out. Oh my
Yeah, no
goodness.
worries. You're welcome.
It's so if anybody wants to pick up a copy of Micah Losh's Mentally Diseased, you can grab it now. It's available on Amazon. I don't know if we're allowed to. It's kind of like ooh taboo. Um, and I've also put it on the cultvaultpodcast.com website. You can click on the website. There's a page dedicated to this 12-hour stream, and you can find links to Micah's work on that website. And also, Micah, can you tell people where they can find you and your work?
Yes, and actually, I would have sent this to you, but I just got it working at like 3 in the morning. So I have a website, micahlosh.com. And if you go there, it has a little bio. I'm going to set up a blog. I'm just not at that point yet. And I have info and a link to Mentally Diseased. I have a little description of Gangrenous Speeches, which I will be adding a link on June 10th when it releases. And I also have the first chat. Well, it's the, I guess, not prequel, the preface to Despicable, which is on my website for anyone to read for free.
Wow.
So, which will be released on December 10th, 2023. That's the other thing I should say about my Apostasy trilogy. 3 books, all released exactly 6 months apart. Because 3 sixes, if you say I'm the Antichrist and an agent of Satan, I'm going to own it. And I'm not going away, Jehovah's Witnesses.
It's really great that we're getting this on record because I feel like in English class, like 20 years from now, when the teacher sits down and says, "What do you think Micah Allen Losh was trying to say when do you think it was intentional that the character that is the Antichrist looked like Micah Allen Losh also looked? Do you also see that the 666, does it play a part here? Was it intentional? Why does the character wear all black?" I'm glad we have this on record so students will have the answers to those questions and won't have to sit there theorizing potentially what you did or didn't
That,
do.
that's a really cool thought. I mean, a lot of the attention to detail, I'm like, yeah, people are never going to recognize this, so I need to just say it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's very empowering to speak out against something that oppressed you for so long. And I don't know. I wish all people that have been raised in these high control groups could experience what it feels like because it's just really I don't know. I don't know how to compare it to anything else. It really is, I don't know, empowering, like I said.
And after a a, an existence of feeling anything but. I imagine that it's very liberating to have the experience of feeling empowered. And telling your story however you unapologetically telling your story as well, um
Yeah.
which is something that I really respect you for, Micah. You are very bold in in your testimonies and when you speak about your experiences. And you know, you kind of have the perspective of, well, what else can the Jehovah's Witnesses take from me? And so there's no um I've
Well,
said just
there's
pulling punches, no pulling punches. I've said that a few times tonight, I think.
well, there is only one thing that they could do. And, my mother shuns me, but she still sees my son, who is 5. And he tells me how she takes him to do the things she used to do with me when I was little. And it almost feels like I've been replaced by my child, which, that's a bizarre feeling, to feel envy almost of a 5-year-old. But I do know that she talks to him about their propaganda cartoons. And of course, she thinks she has the truth and that her God will kill her if she doesn't try and save him. So for me, this is very much a war against a $1 billion cult of 8 million people. If you want to even bring your garbage near my child through my mother, right before my memoir came out, my mom sent me a letter telling me, based on family history I knew of, how likely it is I might get breast cancer because she had it. Men can get it, I guess. And then, but it was a lifeless, bloodless letter, and she wrote me that, and it said, "I do love you. You are my son." It was like it was like AI made it, and it just, when I was in the absolute darkest point of my life, when I was homeless and terrified, my mother ignored me, and I will never speak to her again. I do not care what is going on. Yeah, that is my boundary. It's unacceptable. And the fact that, you did as much as you could to estrange me from my child. I'm not going to hurt anybody. I'm not going to attack, witnesses or destroy kingdom halls, but I'm going to be unrelenting. And you are going to wish I died in the streets. That I mean, I've made stickers. I plaster them everywhere. I work at a bar. I'm always talking to people, trying to find ways to network, and I even down the road, I kind of would like to start a podcast and talk about belief, but like I said, it's war. What they do to people is unacceptable. And they deserve to at least be exposed. I've had numerous people at my job tell me, one of my friends said a Jehovah's Witness was at his door and he handed him a sticker and he said, "My buddy wrote this. It's about your religion. You need to read it." And like, just the few things, it's like I almost feel like I helped save their life, because nobody joins these groups when their life is good, when they're rational. They prey on suffering, lonely, afraid people. And people know Jehovah's Witnesses are weird, but they don't know how evil they are and sinister and judgmental, and that just not good people.
Oh, it's like a cycle as well, because all of those feelings and experiences that you've just listed there, or places that a person might find themselves in, is exactly how individuals feel when they are disfellowshipped or excommunicated or shunned. They feel alone, they feel scared, they feel terrified, which not only places them into a very precarious place of potentially being recruited into another destructive group, but also leaves an individual wondering, how do we begin to recover? And you've talked about the positives of sharing your experiences in the very different ways that you have. And you've also talked about the fact that you will never reconcile with your mother, which kind of leads me to thinking that shunning works both ways. It certainly is something that we hear quite often, hard boundaries being set on the side of the individual that has also walked away from the high demand religious group, the cult extremist group, authoritarian group, all these different words, labels, things that people might use. But one thing I did want to ask you to share with the listeners before we finish today was a really inspiring thing I heard about your school, which I just thought was awesome to read on your social media. So, please, could you share that little anecdote with the listeners?
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I knew where I went to school and all this, but since mentally diseased has come out, the fog is ever dissipating, and it's like new levels of awareness almost or development. It's bizarre, but I just thought, what if there are Jehovah's Witnesses in these school in my school? And I thought, well, I should try and reach out maybe. So I emailed everyone, and I'm a blunt person. I was like, "Hi." The whole time I attended, I was a member of the world's largest Christian fundamentalist doomsday cult. And then a few weeks went by, and I was like, "All right, well, they're like blocking me," and the principal's probably like, "Nobody answered," because I copied everybody. And then a lady, she mentioned, she said, "Yeah, you can send a copy," and so I don't. That's a real. I mean, I didn't even exist in high school. I never hardly spoke to anyone. And the idea of just trying, what is so overwhelming to me is, like, on my website, one of my friends who is a model and we work together, she just posed with me, because they say the devil is a beautiful woman in a red dress. So I asked her, will you take pictures? And there's one of her like rolling an apple to me midair and me catching it, and she did that for free. I mean, as a Jehovah's Witness, I would ask people to go out to eat or go to movies and like sit down, buy seats, get a table, and be stood up and just sit there. I mean, just non-entity, totally being ignored. Some other friends of mine yesterday, they took some pictures, and one of them I'm going to use as my author photo for the back of all my books. And they didn't ask anything of me. They're just, it's really funny that I work in a bar, which of course Jehovah's Witnesses think everybody who works there is a degenerate. Even AA is like, oh, you shouldn't be there. Those people will try and make you drink, all this bullshit. But the only people who have accepted me, no matter what hell I've been in or foul mood or, barely keeping myself from jumping into traffic, they accepted me, they talked to me, they supported me, they shared. That's really staggering and overwhelming to me. So many of the people, because really it's mostly just people at work that I, spend time with, except online. I don't think they can even comprehend what looking me in the eyes and smiling at me and saying hi to me means, because I just lived decades without dignity. Just there were times as a Jehovah's Witness I questioned if I was alive. Drug knives through my body. I've burnt myself just to feel, because you just spend so much time at this frayed end that your body just turns off and you feel nothing. And it's a very bizarre feeling. And I hate Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's not because I'm filled with hatred. It's not because I'm an apostate or serve Satan. I don't even believe in Satan. They just rob people of their dignity, their life, their passion, their family. It's just perverse.
How many, just on pure speculation, and we would never really know, I suppose, the answer to this question. How many people within the organization do you think truly believe in the doctrine, and how many people remain within the fold because the 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 other
It's
alternative is too difficult?
Well, it's really difficult because it's a tattletale culture. So if you're what they call PMO, physically and mentally out, you absolutely cannot talk about this stuff. Like if you and me were both at the Kingdom Hall, I can be like, hey, Casey, I'm having some questions about Deuteronomy, because you're going to go, because we both think that if we disobey, God removes his Holy Spirit from the congregation. But if you look on the ex Jehovah's Witness Reddit, I think there are over 80,000 members. Now, obviously, are they all JWs? Who knows? But I think there are about 6 million baptized Jehovah's Witnesses. And I really think how they get to 8 million is claiming all the children that aren't baptized, and the people who come around and attend meetings. I really don't know. I mean, it was during COVID when I realized, so I wasn't really around people, but, and I just was trying to drink it away. I can't imagine being PMO and going to those meetings. I don't watch, unless there's something really crazy on their website and somebody posts like a screenshot or like a 30-second video, but I can't watch that stuff. And I don't think it's healthy. One thing that really is creepy is I've watched the Heaven's Gate documentary on HBO, how he talked. I watched the Scientology one, Going Clear, how L. Ron Hubbard talked, and even The Way Down, about a weight loss cult with Gwen Shamblin. All the leaders have this very slow, intentional cadence, and I feel like it's a manipulation tactic, and I just can't watch it. It really creeps me out. I can watch
Yeah.
their stuff, but Jehovah's Witness propaganda, I just can't.
It's yeah, I think there's so many. I mean, by design as well. I think immediately of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh's droning,
Yeah.
slow tones, and yeah, uh, oh, so many cult leaders come to mind. In terms of your plans for moving forward, you have this trilogy. Have you thought past that work, or are you focusing on finishing the third book and then perhaps you'll think about what the future holds?
So I I mean, I'm probably maybe 3/4 of the way finished with Despicable. I don't want it to be a really long thing. And I actually have. So if I can, one of the biggest regrets in my life, when I was 10, we were in New York visiting Bethel, and my dad went in the World Trade Center. And I apologize if I've told you this before, but my dad said, "Come up there with me." And I said, "No, Dad, I'm afraid of heights." So he went up, came down. 3 years later, he was dead. Then the World Trade Center was destroyed. So I can't even go back up in that building. And even when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I really tried to pursue things I wanted. And the first time I was disfellowshipped, I tried stand-up comedy with some friends that I happened to work with. It was a bunch of rap groups and me in a Black Sabbath t-shirt. And everything I read said, "You're going to fail, just try it." And I mean, surprisingly, I did pretty well. It was pretty fun. And that was one of the coolest moments of my life. So what I really want to do is, after I get all these out, I want to work on doing stand-up comedy and telling stories about Jehovah's Witnesses, because I love art, but I always want to reflect it back at them. And, like, I want to bring them shame. I want to destroy their reputation. So I feel like it's multifaceted, but I want to do that. I also have plans to skydive with a friend at work, and I'm utterly terrified, but skydiving was forbidden. I also want to swim with sharks this year. And, I just want to do things that I want to do. That even I got a notice for jury duty. Well, I was super excited because that's forbidden as a Jehovah's Witness. The other time I got it, I wrote a letter. I would not be comfortable judging another person, even though all Jehovah's Witnesses do is judge. So yeah, I mean, I hope I don't know, I'm excited. It's weird
Skydiving. Like, is there a specific thing that's written down that says you shall not skydive?
So was it Satan who tells Christ, he says, "Throw yourself off this cliff. You know that angels will save you. God won't let you die. And based on that, you can't go bungee jumping or skydiving.
That's so strange. I haven't heard that. That's new
Well,
for me.
yeah, they say it's taking your life into like your own hands, and you can't expect Jehovah to save you, but he doesn't save them anyway. So what's the point, you know? And if you die, you've paid for your sins no matter what they are. So even if you took, stuff like that, if you really apply just basic critical thought, it turns to ash in your hands.
I really love the idea of reclaiming experiences that people aren't able to have in these groups growing up, and being a part of celebrating your birthday. I love that. On the XJW subreddit, I love seeing people getting their tattoos, dressing promiscuously, or scantily,
Yeah.
and really just embracing all of those things that have been missed during people's time spent within the Jehovah's Witnesses. So skydiving,
Well,
so swimming
even
with
even
sharks, I
beard.
guess, is yeah, the beard, yeah.
Well, and the reason sharks, so as a child, you're promised paradise is coming, envision yourself in paradise. All animals will be peaceable. So, since I was a little boy, I have dreamed of swimming with sharks. I love sharks. I'm terrified to do it, but I'm going to do this stuff and put it on my Twitter. And, like, because I don't want to spend all my time discussing, the Watchtower is going to keep producing crap. And I don't think you can wake people up. If you want to excuse something to double down on living forever and getting your dead loved ones back, you'll excuse anything. I did it for 20 years. I just think, if you do stuff and you draw attention, you tell, but live your life, and people can do whatever they want, but I just don't want to do that. I don't consider myself an activist. When you Google me, it says author. And for me, that's immortality. Watchtower promised me that, and it was a lie. But, things like that, I hope other people who were raised like me do as well, because it's just, I even think you appreciate stuff more than a lot of people who had, regular upbringings, because just when I smoke a cigar, rarely, I haven't smoked in close to a year. Like I feel like such a rebel, like James Dean. Like I feel cool as shit, and it's every once in a while I just do stuff, and it fills me with this great joy that I know most people, and I'd seem insane, but I have a friend who he believes in Bigfoot. He wants me to go search for Bigfoot with him. Do I believe in Bigfoot? Hell no. But he does, and he's 50. And you know what? It's just fun to see a grown man have a belief, because as a Jehovah's Witness, I know a woman who believed in aliens. I didn't, but almost everyone just talked about her like she was crazy and horrible and it was demons. And, it's just fun to talk to an adult who believes in Bigfoot. Like, it's charming to me, So I don't know. Moving on is hard, but I just feel like it comes in waves, and you almost access parts of yourself that never developed.
It's interesting to hear people judging an individual for having a strange belief,
Mhm.
when looking at certain um, scriptures,
Mhm.
and Bible passages. People may have those same thoughts as well. Um, Although saying that, I do try, as an atheist, I do try to stay sensitive and compassionate to individuals that communicate with me, that are still practicing their religion, their faith. Shout out to David. David is a pastor of a church who tunes into the Cult Vault podcast to better understand how he can lead and support a congregation in the most positive way, to ensure that things aren't becoming uh, dangerous. So I think that that's just the most amazing thing ever. I have so much respect for David. So I do try to remain compassionate about that, and I tend to lose myself at times, so I need reminding about that, because it's a,
It,
it's a difficult thing.
it is difficult, and I always say, like, I say I don't respect your beliefs really. Like, I don't believe they're true, but I respect that you believe them, and you hold them dear, and I respect your right to have them. But a lot. I had a guy ask me, because I'm an atheist. Well, he told me I was going to burn in hell, and then he asked me, "Why don't you rape?" And I was like, "Well, what?" I'm like, the Penn, I think it was Penn Teller, the magician. He was asked the same thing. He's an atheist, and he said, "Well, I rape as much as I want to. I just don't want to," which I thought was very clever. But people, it's hard because they think their morals came from the Bible and they're on the right track, so they can't help but see you as an outlier, uh, someone who's doomed. I understand that, wanting to save people, thinking I have, a higher purpose and information they don't have. But it is difficult sometimes to not become angry because stuff can be very offensive as well.
Yeah, yeah. And all of the stuff we spoke about in our first interview around the things that, you feel were kept from you or taken from you. And I imagine that that echoes with so many people that tune into that episode to listen back to that. Which leads us to the end of our conversation today. I appreciate you coming here after a busy shift, and coming to sit down with me for an hour to talk about, to give us a reading, to talk about your trilogy, and to also offer some insight into how art can truly help an individual during their healing process. So, please, before we finish up today, can you tell everybody where they can find you and your work once more?
Yeah, so if you go to micahAllenLosh.com, Allen is Allen. I have a link to mentally diseased. I There will be a link to gangrenous speeches on the 10th. So 8 days, I think, and Despicable is coming in December, on my December 10th, again on my birthday. So yeah, and if you go to my website, I have links to my Reddit, my Twitter, my TikTok, my Instagram, my Facebook. I'm on most things. I'm JW_IN_AA, and definitely, yeah, reach out, any questions or chat or want to follow. That'd be awesome. I hope to see you guys.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Micah. I look forward to the next time we talk about your creative projects and have the chance to catch up. Thank you
Me
for
too.
coming to join us today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, Casey.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. What an amazing talk. And there's only one more to go. One talk left. I hope